My daughter rolled her eyes when I walked into the courtroom, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the defendant's table. She thought I was just another embarrassing mother coming to watch her lose everything. But when Judge Harrison's gavel stopped mid-air and his face went white as winter frost, the entire courtroom fell silent. His whispered words cut through the tension like a blade. Is that her? 23 years of hiding, and now everyone was about to learn exactly who Lori Thompson really was. The morning had started like any other nightmare since Sarah's arrest 6 months ago. I woke at 4:30, made coffee in the same chipped mug I'd used for 15 years, and stared at the kitchen table where she used to eat breakfast before school. The emptiness of that chair hit me fresh every morning, but today was different. Today the trial would begin, and I'd have to watch my only child face justice for betraying everything I'd taught her. I dressed carefully in my navy cardigan, the one with the small hole near the left pocket that I kept meaning to mend. My sensible shoes, brown leather worn soft from years of walking to the bus stop, clicked quietly on the courthouse steps. I wasn't trying to make an impression. I was just a 67-year-old widow whose daughter had allegedly stolen $2.8 million from the charity I'd spent 20 years building. The courtroom smelled of old wood and disappointment. I found a seat in the third row behind the prosecutors, but with a clear view of Sarah. She sat at the defendant's table like a queen holding court, her auburn hair styled in an expensive blowout that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. When our eyes met, she didn't smile or acknowledge me. Instead, she leaned over to her lawyer and said something that made him glance back at me with barely concealed amusement. Maxwell Sterling was exactly the kind of lawyer you'd expect someone like Sarah to hire. Silver-haired, sharp-suited, with the kind of confident stride that came from never losing a case. He defended politicians, celebrities, and now my daughter. The kind of man who could make a jury believe the sun rose in the west if the price was right. Across the aisle, the prosecutor looked overwhelmed already. Jennifer Chen, according to the nameplate, appeared fresh out of law school, drowning in boxes of evidence and constantly dropping her pen. My heart sank. This David and Goliath matchup seemed destined to end badly. "Is that your mother?" Sterling asked Sarah loud enough for half the courtroom to hear. Sarah's laugh was brittle and cruel. Unfortunately, she insisted on coming to play the victim. You know how she loves the attention. The word stung more than any physical blow could have. I'd raised this girl alone after Thomas died, worked 2 jobs to put her through college, and celebrated when she became a financial advisor. How had my baby girl become this cold stranger? The charity board members filed in, taking seats across the courtroom. Harold Fitzgerald, the board president, wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret Simpson, who'd been my friend for 2 decades, studied her phone intently. Even Pastor David from First Methodist, who'd blessed the charity at its founding, seemed fascinated by the ceiling tiles. Their abandonment shouldn't have surprised me. When someone you trust is accused of stealing nearly $3 million, people choose sides quickly. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Marcus Harrison," the bailiff announced. Judge Harrison entered with the measured steps of someone who'd presided over thousands of cases, distinguished early 60s with silver at his temples and the kind of presence that commanded respect. He was known for being tough, but fair, the kind of judge who saw through lies but also recognized truth when it appeared before him. He settled into his chair, reaching for his gavel to begin proceedings. Then his eyes found me in the gallery, and everything changed. The gavel stopped mid-swing. His face, moments before the picture of judicial composure, drained of all color. His mouth opened slightly closed, then opened again like a fish, gasping for air. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath as this pillar of legal authority struggled to form words. "Is that her?" The whisper escaped him before he could stop it, carrying in the perfect acoustics of the courtroom. Sterling jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, is there a problem?" Harrison's eyes never left my face. 23 years of careful anonymity, of being invisible, Lori Thompson shattered in that single moment of recognition. His hands trembled slightly as he set down the gavel. The court requires an immediate recess. He managed, his voice strained. All parties will remain available. Bailiff, clear the courtroom. Your Honor. Sterling protested. We haven't even begun opening statements. Now, counselor. The judge's tone brooked no argument. As people filed out in confused whispers, I remained frozen in my seat. Sarah stared at me with narrowed eyes, trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time since her arrest, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Mom, she called out as the bailiff ushered her toward the holding area. What's going on? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up entirely, because I knew what was coming next, and once that door opened, there would be no going back. 23 years of running, hiding, pretending to be someone else, and it all came down to this moment in a courtroom where my daughter stood accused of crimes that would pale in comparison to the secrets about to be revealed. The bailiff approached me. Ma'am, Judge Harrison would like to see you in his chambers. I stood on unsteady legs, smoothing my cardigan with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Behind me, Sterling was already on his phone, probably calling investigators to find out who I really was. He'd know soon enough. They all would. As I followed the bailiff down the narrow hallway lined with portraits of former judges, I couldn't help but think about the last time I'd walked toward a judge's chambers. That time, I'd worn a different uniform, carried a different name, and held the power to destroy lives with the truth I'd uncovered. This time, I was just Lori Thompson, a widow whose daughter had broken her heart. But Harrison had seen through that facade in an instant, recognizing what others had missed for over 2 decades. The question now wasn't whether my past would be exposed, but whether Sarah would survive the revelation of who her mother really was. The bailiff knocked on the heavy oak door. Judge Harrison, I have Mrs. Thompson. Send her in, alone. I stepped into the chambers and the door closed behind me with a finality that echoed through my bones. Harrison stood behind his desk, no longer the composed judge, but a man seeing a ghost from a past that refused to stay buried. My God, he breathed. Captain Blackwood, after all these years. Judge Harrison's chambers felt smaller than the interrogation rooms I'd once commanded, despite the wall of law books and the massive mahogany desk between us. He gestured to a leather chair, but I remained standing, old military habits dying hard, even after decades of civilian life. You can sit, Captain, he said softly. The war's over. It's just Lori now, I replied, finally taking the seat. Lori Thompson has been for 23 years. Harrison poured himself a glass of water from a crystal decanter, his hands steadier now, but still showing signs of shock. I watched you die, Victoria. We all did. The official report, the memorial service, the medal ceremony your parents attended. How? I'd rehearsed this explanation 1,000 times in my mind, but never expected to give it. The JAG office felt it was necessary after the Stone trial. You remember the threats. Remember. Harrison laughed bitterly. I was Lieutenant Harrison then, fresh out of law school, assigned to your security detail. I watched them paint that target on your back for doing your job too well. Colonel Marcus Stone. Even thinking his name sent ice through my veins. The highest-ranking officer ever prosecuted for treason, selling military intelligence to the highest bidder for 15 years. Hundreds of operations compromised, dozens of agents exposed, and 17 confirmed deaths linked to his betrayal. I'd been 31 years old, the youngest female JAG officer to prosecute such a case, and I'd torn apart his defense piece by piece until the jury had no choice but to convict. His daughter, Harrison, continued settling into his own chair. Rebecca, she was killed 3 weeks after the verdict. By the same foreign operatives her father had been selling information to, I finished. They thought she might know where he'd hidden additional intelligence. She didn't. She was just a 22-year-old kindergarten teacher who loved her father despite his crimes. Stone blamed you. He promised to kill everyone I loved than me, said he'd take his time, make sure I understood loss the way he did. I rubbed my arms, feeling phantom chills from threats delivered decades ago. The FBI intercepted communications suggesting he'd already hired someone. That's when witness protection stepped in. Harrison leaned back, studying me with the analytical gaze that made him such an effective judge. Captain Victoria Blackwood, JAG prosecutor extraordinaire, becomes Lori Thompson, bookkeeper. That's quite a fall. It wasn't a fall, it was survival. I thought of Thomas, the sweet plumber who'd married me without knowing my real name, who'd loved me through night terrors. He never understood who'd given me Sarah. I built a good life, a quiet one, but good. Until now. Harrison gestured toward the courtroom. Your daughter has no idea who you really are. She thinks I'm exactly what I appear to be, a widow who started a charity after her husband's death, nothing more exciting than PTA meetings and church bake sales in my past. I forced myself to meet his eyes. James, you have to recuse yourself. This connection compromises everything. Already planning to, but Victoria, Lori, you need to know something. He pulled a file from his desk drawer, hesitating before sliding it across to me. Stone was released 6 months ago. Good behavior, believe it or not. The room tilted. I gripped the chair arms to steady myself. That's impossible. He got life without parole. Life with the possibility after 25. His lawyer found a technicality, something about evidence handling. He's been out since January. January, 6 months ago. The same time Sarah had started acting strange, distant. The same time money began disappearing from the charity accounts. My mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Does he know where I am? Harrison's silence was answer enough. How long? We're not sure. But Lori, there's more. He opened the file, revealing surveillance photos. These were taken last month. The images showed me at the grocery store, at the charity office, walking into my house. Normal activities made sinister by the knowledge that someone had been watching, documenting hunting. In one photo, Sarah was with me, laughing at something on her phone outside a coffee shop. Why didn't anyone warn me? The marshals lost track of him for 3 months. By the time they realized he might have found you, you were already dealing with Sarah's arrest. They've been monitoring, waiting to see his next move. And my daughter's arrest, the timing. Harrison spread his hands. Could be coincidence. Could be something more. That's why I need to bring in another judge, someone with no connection to your past. Patricia Winters from the Second Circuit. She's tough, but impartial. I stood needing to move to think. 23 years of safety shattered in 6 months, and my daughter sat in a cell accused of stealing from the charity I'd built to help children who'd lost parents to violence. The irony wasn't lost on me. What about Sarah's lawyer, Sterling? No known connections to Stone, but we'll dig deeper. Lori, you need protection. Let me call the marshals, get you somewhere safe until we understand what's happening. I can't leave, not with Sarah facing trial. Your daughter accused you of framing her for embezzlement. She's hardly concerned about your well-being. The words stung because they were true. Sarah's defense strategy, according to the papers Sterling had filed, painted me as a manipulative mother who'd stolen charity funds and set up her own daughter to take the fall. It was so far from reality, it might have been laughable if it didn't hurt so much. She's still my daughter. I won't abandon her no matter what she's done or what she believes about me. Harrison sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of my jaw from decades past. You always were impossible to protect from your own sense of duty. Fine, but you'll accept a discreet security detail, non-negotiable. I nodded, then asked the question that had been burning since he'd recognized me. How did you know after all this time, the surgery, the weight gain, the different hair? How did you recognize me? For the first time since I'd entered his chambers, Harrison smiled. Your eyes, Victoria. You can change everything else, but you still have the eyes of someone who stares down injustice and refuses to blink. I'd recognize them anywhere. A knock interrupted whatever response I might have made. Judge Harrison, Miss Chen, and Mr. Sterling are asking about the delay. 5 more minutes, Harrison called back, then turned to me. When you return to that courtroom, you need to be Lori Thompson. Can you do that? Can you sit there and play the grieving mother while your past circles like sharks? I've been playing her for over 2 decades. I think I can manage a few more days. This isn't just about maintaining cover anymore. If Stone is involved, if he's somehow orchestrated this to draw you out, Harrison didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. Then I'll handle it the way I've handled everything else, one truth at a time. I moved toward the door, then paused. The new Judge Winters. What's she like? Brilliant, meticulous, takes no nonsense from showboat lawyers like Sterling. He stood straightening his robes. She also has a particular hatred for financial crimes that destroy charitable organizations. Your daughter picked the wrong judge to try her theatrics on. Small mercies. I reached for the door handle, then looked back at the man who'd once been assigned to protect me. Thank you, James, for the warning, for recognizing what others missed, for still giving a damn after all these years. Just be careful, Captain. Stone spent 20 years in prison planning his revenge. Whatever's happening here, your daughter's trial might be just the opening move. I left his chambers with that warning echoing in my ears, returning to a courtroom where everything had changed and nothing had. Sarah still sat at the defendant's table, still wore that expression of cold disdain when she looked at me. Sterling still radiated smug confidence despite the delay. The board members still avoided my gaze. But now I knew. Stone was free. Stone was watching. And somehow my daughter had become either his unwitting pawn or willing accomplice in a game I'd thought ended 23 years ago. The careful life I'd built as Lori Thompson was crumbling, and I had to find a way to save Sarah before my past destroyed us both. As the bailiff announced Judge Winters' arrival, I settled into my seat and became once again the unremarkable widow everyone expected to see. But inside, Captain Victoria Blackwood was waking up, preparing for a different kind of war than the one she'd fought in courtrooms decades ago. This time it wasn't about justice for strangers. This time it was personal. Judge Patricia Winters commanded the courtroom with an entirely different energy than Harrison. Where he had been shaken by recognition, she entered with the focused intensity of someone who'd reviewed every document and formed preliminary opinions. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her black robes seemed to add gravity to her already imposing presence. I apologize for the delay, she began, her voice crisp and carrying. Judge Harrison has recused himself due to a potential conflict of interest. I've reviewed the case files and will proceed immediately. Mr. Sterling, your opening statement. Sterling rose like a maestro, preparing to conduct a symphony. His smile was all teeth and no warmth as he approached the jury box, 12 citizens who would decide my daughter's fate. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to expose a terrible betrayal. Not the betrayal my client is accused of, but the betrayal of a daughter by her own mother. He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. Sarah Morrison trusted the woman who raised her, worked beside her for years at the Helping Hearts Children's Foundation, only to discover that Lori Thompson had been systematically stealing from the very children she claimed to help. I forced myself to remain still to play the part of the shocked mother. Inside, my mind raced. How could Sarah believe this? What evidence had they manufactured? We will show you documents signed by Mrs. Thompson, authorizing transfers to offshore accounts. We will present testimony from board members who grew suspicious of her activities. And we will prove that when Mrs. Thompson realized her scheme was about to be exposed, she did the unthinkable. She framed her own daughter to save herself. Jennifer Chen's chair scraped as she stood for her opening. The young prosecutor had seemed overwhelmed earlier, but now there was something different in her bearing, a determination that reminded me of myself at that age. Mr. Sterling paints a compelling picture. Chen began, her voice stronger than I'd expected. The problem is, it's fiction. Sarah Morrison stole $2.8 million from children who lost parents to violence. She did it methodically over 2 years, using her position as the foundation's financial advisor to cover her tracks. The evidence will show a clear pattern of embezzlement, And the only betrayal here is a daughter who chose greed over the values her mother taught her. The morning progressed with Sterling calling his first witness. Harold Fitzgerald took the stand, his 60-year-old face arranged in an expression of reluctant duty. As board president, his testimony would carry weight. "I've known Lori Thompson for 15 years," Harold began after being sworn in. "She seemed dedicated to the charity, almost obsessively so. But in the last 2 years, things changed." "How so?" Sterling prompted. "She became secretive, started handling more of the finances personally instead of letting Sarah do her job. There were discrepancies in the books that she couldn't explain satisfactorily." I wanted to scream. Harold had been the one pushing for less oversight, insisting we trust Sarah completely because she was family. Now he sat there rewriting history with the confidence of a man who'd done this before. "Did you confront Mrs. Thompson about these discrepancies?" I tried. She became defensive, accused me of not trusting her daughter, said I was trying to undermine Sarah's position. Harold shifted in his seat, playing the part of the concerned colleague perfectly. That's when I started documenting everything. I had a feeling something wasn't right. Sterling produced a folder of documents. "Are these the records you kept?" Harold made a show of examining them carefully. "Yes, these show transfers Mrs. Thompson authorized without board approval, nearly $3 million over 24 months. "And where did this money go?" "Various accounts, some offshore, some domestic. The pattern was clearly designed to avoid detection." Chen's cross-examination was sharp, but limited. She could only work with what she knew, and Harold had clearly rehearsed his lies thoroughly. But I noticed something Chen might have missed. The way Harold's eyes kept finding Sarah at the defendant's table, little glances that spoke of intimacy. The afternoon brought more evidence of my supposed crimes, forged documents that looked authentic enough to fool anyone who didn't know my actual signature, had changed after Thomas died when arthritis made my handwriting shakier. Emails from accounts I'd never created discussing transfers I'd never authorized. Sarah took the stand just before 4 o'clock. My daughter, whom I'd raised alone, whom I'd sung to sleep and taught to ride a bike, and celebrated with at every milestone, sat in the witness box prepared to destroy me. "Ms. Morrison." Sterling began gently, as if speaking to a wounded child. "I know this is difficult. Can you tell the jury about your relationship with your mother?" Sarah's voice was steady, controlled. "I thought we were close. After Dad died, it was just us. I wanted to help her honor his memory through the charity, use my financial skills to make a difference." "And how did that go?" "At first, wonderful. We helped so many families. But about 2 years ago, I noticed irregularities in the accounts. When I tried to investigate, Mom became paranoid, accused me of overstepping." "Did you continue to investigate despite her objections?" "I had to. These were children's futures at stake." Sarah's voice caught with perfectly timed emotion. "I found evidence of transfers to accounts that weren't in our official records. When I confronted her, she said it was for emergency funds and I should trust her." I studied my daughter's face, searching for some sign of the girl I'd raised. But this polished performance showed no cracks, no hints of doubt. Either she truly believed these lies, or she'd become a better actress than her mother had ever been. "What happened next?" "I started keeping my own records documenting everything. I was going to report it to the board, but then—" Sarah paused, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "The police showed up at my door. Mom had already reported me as the thief. She'd used her access to plant evidence, making it look like I was the one stealing. The story was so perfectly crafted, so precisely designed to paint me as a monster, that I almost admired the skill behind it. But who had coached her? Sterling was good. But this level of detail, this specific targeting of my character, felt personal." "Ms. Morrison," Sterling continued, "I need to ask about something sensitive. Did you ever discover anything about your mother's past that seemed unusual?" My blood chilled. How much did they know? "I was working on a genealogy project as a gift for her birthday," Sarah said. "I wanted to trace our family history, maybe find some distant relatives. But when I searched for records from before 1991, it was like she didn't exist. No birth certificate matching her details, no school records, nothing. What did you conclude from this? I thought maybe she'd been in witness protection or something. But when I asked, she got angry, said I was paranoid and should focus on my own life. Sarah looked directly at me for the first time. Now, I wonder what else she's been hiding. Chen objected to the speculation and Judge Winters sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury was now wondering what secrets Lori Thompson might be hiding, what kind of person assumed a false identity. As court adjourned for the day, I remained seated while others filed out. Chen approached gathering her files with movements that seemed deliberately slow. "Mrs. Thompson," she said quietly, "could I speak with you privately?" I nodded, following her to a small conference room. Once the door closed, Chen's entire demeanor changed. The overwhelming young prosecutor disappeared, replaced by someone far more calculating. "You're not who you claim to be," she said simply, "and neither am I." I said nothing, years of training keeping my expression neutral. Chen pulled out her phone, showing me a photograph. It was Stone at his sentencing, being led away in shackles. Beside him, holding his hand, was Rebecca, and next to Rebecca, a younger girl with Chen's distinctive features. "Rebecca Stone was my cousin," Chen said. "Uncle Marcus always said you railroaded him, that you destroyed our family for your career. When Rebecca died, he blamed you entirely." My hand moved instinctively to my purse where pepper spray waited, but Chen held up a hand. "Relax. I know what really happened. I was 15 when Rebecca died, old enough to understand she was killed by her father's associates, not by some vendetta against you. Uncle Marcus was a traitor who got his own daughter killed, and he spent 20 years refusing to accept responsibility." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he's here, in the city. He's been watching you for months, and I think your daughter's trial is part of something bigger." Chen pulled out a folder. "I've been assigned to lose this case. My superiors think I'm too inexperienced to handle Sterling, but that's the point. They want your daughter acquitted and you destroyed. Uncle Marcus has friends, people who owe him favors, people who benefited from his intelligence sales and were never caught. He can't kill you outright. Too much scrutiny. But destroying your reputation, turning your daughter against you, taking everything you've built, that's poetic justice in his mind. I sank into a chair, the weight of 23 years of running suddenly overwhelming. Sarah doesn't know any of this. She can't be part of his plan. "Are you sure that genealogy story wasn't random? Someone pointed her in the right direction, made sure she'd find the gaps in your history. And Harold Fitzgerald, he's been taking money from offshore accounts linked to my uncle's old associates." "You have proof." Chen smiled grimly. "I've been building a case for 3 years, waiting for Uncle Marcus to surface. When this assignment came up, I knew it was my chance. But I need your help. We need to let them think they're winning while we gather enough evidence to bury them all. My daughter could go to prison." "Your daughter is committing actual crimes, Mrs. Thompson. Or should I say Captain Blackwood?" At my sharp intake of breath, Chen nodded. "Uncle Marcus told stories about you. The brilliant JAG prosecutor who never lost a case, who saw through every lie. That woman wouldn't let emotion cloud her judgment. That woman didn't have a daughter who hated her. No, but she had a sense of justice that put dangerous men behind bars. We can save Sarah from the worst of this, maybe get her a deal if she cooperates, but only if we play this perfectly." I thought of Sarah on the stand, the cold calculation in her eyes, as she painted me as a criminal. Either she'd been manipulated by a master, or my daughter had darkness in her I'd never recognized. Neither option offered comfort. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep playing the victim. Let Sterling humiliate you on the stand tomorrow. While everyone watches the show, I'll be documenting every connection between the players." Chen pulled out a small device. "Wear this. It's recording everything within 20 feet, uploading to FBI servers in real time." "The FBI is involved." "Unofficially. Stone made a mistake contacting former associates who are under surveillance. We couldn't move on him directly, but this gives us a window." Chen stood to leave, then paused. "Captain Blackwood, I'm sorry. For what my uncle did to you, for what he's doing now. Rebecca would have hated this." After she left, I sat alone in the conference room staring at the recording device. Tomorrow I would take the stand and let my daughter's lawyer tear me apart, all while wearing a wire that would capture evidence against the man who'd haunted my nightmares for decades. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 23 years hiding from Marcus Stone, building a quiet life where my biggest concern was charity fundraisers and church bake sales. Now, to save my daughter from a trap she might have willingly walked into, I had to become Captain Blackwood again. But this time, I wouldn't be prosecuting in a military court with clear rules and protocols. This time, the battlefield was a civil courtroom, where my own child was both victim and accomplice, where the truth was whatever Sterling could make the jury believe, and where the real enemy sat somewhere in the shadows pulling strings I was only beginning to see. As I left the courthouse, I noticed a man reading a newspaper on a bench across the street. He looked up as I passed, and for just a moment our eyes met. 23 years older gray, where he'd once been dark, but unmistakably Marcus Stone. He smiled and tipped an imaginary hat. The war had begun. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at the recording device Chen had given me. It was smaller than a button designed to look like the kind of decorative pin a woman my age might wear on her cardigan. Technology had advanced considerably since my JAG days when wearing a wire meant bulky equipment and constant fear of discovery. My phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Victoria." The voice was older, raspier, but unmistakably Stone's. "Or do you prefer Lori now?" I gripped the phone tighter, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I don't know anyone named Victoria." His laugh was like gravel in a blender. 23 years and you still can't lie convincingly. That's what I always admired about you, Captain. Your rigid adherence to truth. Must be killing you to watch your daughter lie so beautifully. "What do you want?" "Justice. You took everything from me. My career, my freedom, my daughter. Did you know Rebecca wanted to be a teacher? She was so excited about her kindergarten class, had names for all the stuffed animals she used for story time." His voice hardened. "They found her body in a drainage ditch. The men who killed her were looking for information I'd supposedly hidden. Information that didn't exist because you'd already seized everything. You sold secrets that got 17 people killed. Rebecca's death was a consequence of your choices, not mine. See, still so righteous. Still so certain of your moral superiority." I heard ice clinking in a glass. "Your daughter doesn't have your rigid morality. Does she?" Sarah understood immediately when I explained how you destroyed our family. She was quite eager to help once she learned the truth. "You're lying." Ask her about our meetings. Every Sunday for 6 months at that coffee shop on Maple Street. She thinks I'm a wrongfully convicted veteran who knew her mother in the service, which is true from a certain perspective. My world tilted. Sunday mornings, Sarah had said she was attending a financial planning seminar. I'd been so proud of her dedication to improving her skills. "She's particularly bitter about the trust fund," Stone continued. "The one you never told her about. $500,000 sitting in an account she can't touch until you die. She assumed you stole it from the charity years ago, set it aside for yourself while pretending to live modestly." The emergency fund, my insurance policy in case Stone ever found us. Sarah had discovered it and drawn the worst possible conclusion. "I'm going to destroy you, Victoria, not with a bullet or a bomb. That would be too merciful. I'm going to take everything, your reputation, your daughter, your freedom. You'll rot in prison knowing Sarah hates you that she helped put you there. The FBI knows you're here. You won't get away with this." "The FBI can know whatever they want. I haven't broken any laws. Just had coffee with a confused young woman, offered a sympathetic ear about her troubled relationship with her mother." Another laugh. Your daughter came to her own conclusions about your guilt. I merely provided context. The line went dead. I spent the rest of the night reviewing everything I knew. Stone had been grooming Sarah for 6 months, feeding her just enough truth mixed with lies to poison her against me. The embezzlement from the charity. Was that her idea or his? Either way, she'd actively participated stealing money meant for children who'd lost parents. When morning came, I dressed carefully. The wire went inside my blouse, the decorative pin serving as its disguise. I chose my most unremarkable outfit. Beige slacks, white blouse, the same navy cardigan, Lori Thompson's uniform of invisibility. The courthouse was busier on day 2. Media had picked up the story of the charity director accused by her own daughter. Reporters thrust microphones at me as I climbed the steps, shouting questions I didn't answer. Inside, I found Chen already at the prosecutor's table. "Did he contact you?" she asked quietly. I nodded slightly. "Good. We were hoping he'd get cocky. Every call is being traced recorded. He's using burner phones, but he's staying in the same general area. We'll have him soon." Sterling was already performing for the gathering crowd, his confidence even more pronounced than yesterday. Sarah sat beside him in a dove-gray suit that made her look young and vulnerable. She didn't acknowledge my presence. Judge Winters called the court to order with sharp raps of her gavel. "Mr. Sterling, you may call your next witness." The defense recalls Lori Thompson. This was it. I walked to the witness stand with measured steps, remembering Chen's instructions. Let him humiliate you. Play the victim. Every word would be recorded, analyzed, used to build the real case happening beneath the surface. "Mrs. Thompson." Sterling began his tone dripping condescension. "Yesterday, your daughter testified about discovering your hidden past. Can you explain why there are no records of your existence before 1991? "I don't know what you mean. I've lived in Ohio my whole life." "Really? Then perhaps you can provide your maiden name for the court record." I hesitated, playing the part of someone caught in a lie. "Mitchell. Lori Mitchell." Sterling produced a document with theatrical flair. "I have here a search of all birth records in Ohio from 1950 to 1960. No Lori Mitchell matching your description exists. Can you explain that? There must be some mistake. Maybe the records were lost or misfiled." Lost. How convenient. He moved closer, a predator sensing weakness. "Isn't it true that you assumed a false identity to hide criminal activities from your past?" "Objection," Chen called out. "Speculation." Sustained, Judge Winters ruled, but her eyes stayed on me with new interest. Sterling shifted tactics. "Let's discuss the $500,000 your daughter discovered. Money hidden in an account she didn't know existed. Where did that money come from?" "It was from my husband's life insurance and our savings. I set it aside for emergencies." "Emergencies? Not for your daughter's education, not for the charity you claim to care so much about. Just sitting there, hidden, accumulating interest while you pleaded poverty to donors." Each question was a calculated blow designed to make me look guilty, selfish, deceptive. I answered with half-truths and stammered explanations, playing the role of the exposed criminal while the wire captured every word. "Mrs. Thompson, I'll ask you directly. Did you steal money from the Helping Hearts Children's Foundation?" "No, I would never." "Yet the evidence shows transfers you authorized accounts in your name, a pattern of deception spanning years. Your own daughter uncovered your crimes. Do you really expect this jury to believe everyone else is lying except you?" I let tears fill my eyes, not entirely an act. "Sarah is my daughter. I don't understand why she's doing this. Perhaps because she has a conscience. Perhaps because she couldn't stand by and watch you steal from orphaned children." Sterling returned to his table, picking up another file. "Let's discuss your meeting with Harold Fitzgerald on March 15th of last year." March 15th. I'd never met privately with Harold, had specifically avoided being alone with him after sensing something off about his interest in the charity's finances. but Sterling produced a restaurant receipt security footage from a hotel lobby documents that painted a picture of a clandestine meeting. All fabricated but convincing. The morning continued with Sterling systematically destroying my character, my reputation, my life. I played my part, growing smaller in the witness chair, letting him score victory after victory. The jury watched with a mixture of sympathy and suspicion, seeing a woman caught in lies but not quite sure what the truth was. When court recessed for lunch, I escaped to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall and fighting the urge to vomit. The wire felt like it was burning against my skin, carrying the poison of every lie to Chen's FBI contacts. "Mrs. Thompson," a voice called. "Margaret Simpson from the charity board." I emerged from the stall, meeting the eyes of a woman I'd considered a friend. "Margaret, I'm sorry about all this. I want you to know not all of us believe Sarah's version, but the evidence looks damning, I know." Margaret glanced around, then stepped closer. "Harold's been acting strange for months. Secret phone calls, sudden windfalls of cash he claims came from investments. Some of us think he's involved in this somehow. Why didn't you say anything?" "To whom the police were already convinced of your guilt. Harold's the board president. And Sarah." She sighed. "We all watched that girl grow up. It's hard to believe she'd do something like this without cause." I wanted to tell her everything. About Stone, about the setup, about the FBI investigation happening parallel to this sham trial. But I just nodded, playing the defeated woman everyone expected to see. "Take care, Lori. Whatever happens, some of us remember the good you've done." After she left, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't Captain Victoria Blackwood, JAG prosecutor. She wasn't even really Lori Thompson anymore. She was something in between, a ghost caught between two lives while her daughter helped orchestrate her destruction. The afternoon session brought more witnesses, employees from the charity who'd been coached to remember suspicious behavior, bank officials who authenticated forged documents. Each testimony added another brick to the wall Sterling was building around me. Sarah watched it all with cool detachment, occasionally whispering to Sterling or taking notes. Only once did our eyes meet, and in that moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Doubt, regret, or just annoyance that I was still maintaining innocence. Chen's cross-examinations were perfunctory, going through the motions of a prosecutor who knew she was fighting a losing battle. But I caught the subtle ways she was laying groundwork, getting witnesses to confirm dates, locations, connections that would matter when the real case was revealed. As the day wound down, Sterling announced his final witness for tomorrow. The defense will call Marcus Stone a decorated veteran who has crucial information about Mrs. Thompson's past. My blood turned to ice. Stone was going to testify. He was going to sit in open court and tell his version of our history, paint himself as the victim and me as the vindictive prosecutor who destroyed his life. And Sarah would sit there, believing every word. Judge Winters adjourned for the day with instructions for the jury to avoid media coverage, as if that were possible with reporters camped outside with social media already convicting me in the court of public opinion. I waited until the courtroom was nearly empty before standing. Chen caught my eye, a small nod confirming she'd heard Sterling's announcement. Stone testifying was a risk for him, but also an opportunity. He'd be under oath on record subject to cross-examination. As I gathered my things, Sarah approached. For a moment, we stood facing each other across the bar that separated spectators from participants. "Why are you keeping this up?" she asked quietly. "Just confess. Take a plea deal. Stop making this harder than it needs to be." "Because I didn't do what you're accusing me of. The evidence is fabricated. Deep down, you know that. You know me, Sarah. Have I ever lied to you about anything important?" Something shifted in her expression. "You lied about who you were, about your entire past. To protect you, to protect us both. From what could be so terrible that you'd erase your whole identity." She leaned forward, searching my face. "Who are you really?" Before I could answer, Sterling appeared at her elbow. "Sarah, we need to go. Evening strategy session. My daughter allowed herself to be led away, but she looked back once. In that glance, I saw the first crack in her certainty. It wasn't much, but it was something. Tomorrow, Marcus Stone would take the stand. Tomorrow, 23 years of carefully constructed lies would unravel in front of my daughter. But tonight, I had to prepare for the performance of my life, sitting quietly while the man who'd threatened to kill everyone I loved spun his web of deception in a court of law. I drove home through streets I'd traveled for 2 decades past the life I'd built as Lori Thompson. Tomorrow, that life would effectively end. The only question was whether I could save my daughter before Stone's revenge destroyed us both. The wire sat heavy against my chest, recording every breath, every heartbeat of a woman caught between 2 identities. Captain Victoria Blackwood would have faced this challenge head-on, weapons of law and logic at her disposal. But I wasn't her anymore. I was a mother watching her child slip away, manipulated by a monster who'd waited 23 years for this moment. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street. Chen's surveillance providing the illusion of safety. But we both knew the real danger wasn't physical. It was the poison Stone had dripped into my daughter's ear for 6 months, the careful cultivation of doubt and resentment that had turned Sarah into his weapon. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation I'd spent half my life avoiding. But tonight I sat at my kitchen table and did what Lori Thompson would do. I prayed for wisdom, for strength, and most of all for a daughter who might already be lost. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold, surrounded by photo albums from Sarah's childhood. Her first day of kindergarten clutching a lunchbox with cartoon characters. Her high school graduation beaming with pride and possibility. Her college years when she'd called me every Sunday to share her dreams of making a difference in the world. When had Sunday calls become Sunday meetings with Marcus Stone? At 5 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Today, everyone learns the truth. I deleted it and went to shower, letting hot water wash away the exhaustion but not the dread. As I dressed, the same unremarkable uniform, the same hidden wire, I thought about the last time I'd seen Stone in a courtroom. He'd been in shackles, then being led away after sentencing, but not before turning to mouth a single word, soon. 23 years wasn't soon by most definitions, but for revenge served this cold. Perhaps it was perfect timing. The courthouse was surrounded by media trucks when I arrived. Stone's name on the witness list had leaked, and reporters who'd covered his original trial were descending like vultures sensing carrion. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring questions about my secret past and hidden identity. Inside, Chen was already huddled with 2 people I didn't recognize, FBI agents judging by their suits and bearing. "Mrs. Thompson," Chen said formally, then dropped her voice, "Stone's testimony is a gift. He thinks he's untouchable, but every word will be analyzed, every claim investigated. Just hold on a little longer." "What about Sarah?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "We've been monitoring her communications. She's conflicted. Stone has been careful, never directly telling her to steal, just planting seeds. But she made her own choices." I took my usual seat as the courtroom filled. Sarah entered with Sterling, but instead of her usual confident stride, she seemed unsettled. Her eyes kept darting to the witness door, perhaps realizing that meeting her mother's enemy in a coffee shop was different from watching him testify against her. Judge Winters called the court to order. "Mr. Sterling, call your next witness." The defense calls Marcus Stone. The doors opened and my past walked in. Stone had aged better than he deserved. Prison had hardened him, but not broken him. He walked with military precision despite a slight limp, his gray hair neatly trimmed, wearing a suit that looked expensive enough to raise questions about his income. His eyes found mine immediately and his smile was all predator. After being sworn in, he settled into the witness chair with the comfort of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment. "Mr. Stone," Sterling began, "can you tell the court how you know the defendant's mother?" I knew her as Captain Victoria Blackwood JAG Corps. She was the prosecutor in my court-martial in 2001. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide as she stared at me. I kept my face neutral, playing the part of someone whose secret had been exposed. You were convicted of treason, is that correct? I was wrongfully convicted, Stone corrected smoothly. Captain Blackwood was ambitious, ruthless. She needed a high-profile conviction to advance her career, and I was convenient. Objection, Chen said. The witness's conviction was upheld on appeal multiple times. Sustained, Judge Winters ruled. Mr. Stone, please stick to facts, not interpretations. Stone nodded graciously. I served 23 years in federal prison. During that time, my daughter Rebecca was murdered by foreign operatives who believed I had information I'd allegedly sold. She died because Captain Blackwood painted a target on my family. How did you come to meet Sarah Morrison? After my release, I wanted to find Captain Blackwood. Not for revenge, he added quickly, but for closure, to understand why she'd destroyed my life. I discovered she'd assumed a false identity, was living as Lori Thompson. When I learned she had a daughter, I was curious. I wanted to know what kind of person the daughter of Victoria Blackwood would be. So I approached Sarah, carefully introduced myself as someone who'd served with her mother. We began meeting for coffee, and I shared stories about who her mother really was. Sarah was gripping the table edge so hard her knuckles had gone white. Sterling noticed and smoothly continued his questioning. What did you tell Miss Morrison about her mother? The truth, that Victoria Blackwood was a prosecutor who would do anything to win, that she'd hidden assets from seized investigations, used her position to build a fortune she could access after leaving the military, that the emergency fund Sarah discovered was likely from those illegal activities. Every word was a carefully crafted lie wrapped around just enough truth to be believed. Stone had clearly rehearsed this narrative until it sounded reasonable, even sympathetic. Did you encourage Miss Morrison to steal from the charity? Absolutely not. Stone looked shocked at the suggestion. I was horrified when she was arrested. I only wanted her to know the truth about her mother. No further questions. Chen rose for cross-examination, and I saw Stone's confidence flicker. He'd expected the overwhelmed young prosecutor, not the steel beneath. Mr. Stone, you said you were wrongfully convicted, yet 17 intelligence operatives died because of information you sold. Can you explain that? Coincidence. Those operatives were in dangerous positions. I have here the original trial transcripts. You were caught with classified documents in a storage unit rented under an alias. Bank records showed payments from foreign governments. 32 witnesses testified against you. Was all of that fabricated? Stone's jaw tightened. Captain Blackwood was very thorough in framing me. So thorough that multiple courts upheld your conviction that the Supreme Court refused to hear your appeal. Chen moved closer. Mr. Stone, isn't it true that you blamed Captain Blackwood for your daughter's death and swore revenge? I was grieving. People say things. I quote from a letter you sent from prison entered into evidence at your parole hearing. I will take everything from her. Her career, her family, her life. She will know the pain of losing a daughter. Did you write those words? Taken out of context. Did you write them? Yes. Chen produced a folder. Phone records show you've been in this city for 6 months. You've been photographing Mrs. Thompson following her movements. You approached her daughter under false pretenses. This isn't about closure, is it? This is about revenge. I've done nothing illegal, Stone said stiffly. Having coffee with someone isn't a crime. No, but conspiracy to commit fraud is. Mr. Stone, who's paying for your apartment, your clothes, your lawyer. Sterling objected, but Judge Winters overruled him. The witness will answer. I have supporters, people who believe in my innocence. People like Vladimir Kozlov, former KGB, now running private intelligence services, or Chen Wei, who operated the Chinese network you sold information to. Chen's questions came rapid fire. These supporters wouldn't happen to be the same foreign operatives you sold secrets to 23 years ago. Objection. Sterling was on his feet. Counsel is testifying. Withdrawn. Chen smiled coldly. Mr. Stone, one final question. If you truly believed Mrs. Thompson had stolen money during her JAG service, why didn't you report it to authorities? Why approach her daughter instead? Stone hesitated just long enough for the jury to notice. I thought Sarah deserved to know the truth. Or you thought you could manipulate a young woman's relationship with her mother for your own ends. No further questions. As Stone left the stand, he passed close to the defense table. I saw him mouth something to Sarah, saw her face crumble in response. Whatever certainty she'd had was evaporating as the reality of who she'd been trusting became clear. Sterling called for a recess, and I watched him huddle with Sarah, clearly trying to salvage their strategy. But the damage was done. The jury had seen Stone for what he was, a convicted traitor seeking revenge, not a truthful witness exposing corruption. Chen approached during the break. We've got him. Those names I mentioned. We've been tracking money from their accounts to his. He just confirmed the connection on the stand. What about Sarah? That's up to her now. She can cooperate and testify about Stone's manipulation, maybe get probation instead of prison. Or she can go down with this ship. I watched my daughter across the courtroom, saw her shoulders shaking as Sterling tried to calm her. The Sarah who'd testified yesterday with such cold certainty was gone, replaced by a young woman realizing she'd been used. When court resumed, Sterling's confidence had evaporated. Your Honor, the defense requests a brief continuance to reassess our strategy in light of new information. Judge Winters studied him over her glasses. Mr. Sterling, we're in the middle of trial. Unless you have a compelling reason— Your Honor, Chen interrupted. The prosecution has information suggesting this entire trial may be the result of a criminal conspiracy. We request permission to present evidence outside the jury's presence. The next hour was a blur of legal arguments, sealed documents, and whispered conferences. The jury was dismissed for the day, and Judge Winters ordered all parties to her chambers. In that wood-paneled room, the truth finally came out. Chen laid out the evidence: Stone's connections to foreign operatives, the money trail, the months of manipulation. FBI agents presented surveillance records, financial documents, recordings of Stone, discussing his revenge plan with associates who didn't know they were being monitored. Sarah sat through it all in stunned silence, occasionally looking at me with eyes full of questions I couldn't answer yet. Finally, Judge Winters spoke. This is extraordinary. Mrs. Thompson, or should I say Captain Blackwood, you've been aware of this investigation. Since yesterday, Your Honor. Agent Chen approached me after Stone contacted me directly. And you continued the charade to gather evidence. To protect my daughter and expose a larger conspiracy, yes. Sterling, to his credit, recovered quickly. Your Honor, my client was clearly manipulated by a convicted criminal. Under the circumstances, we'd like to discuss a plea arrangement. I imagine you would. Judge Winters turned to Sarah. Miss Morrison, you've been remarkably quiet. Do you have anything to say? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Is it true everything Stone said about my mother's past, was it all lies? Chen answered before I could. Your mother was one of the most decorated JAG prosecutors in military history. She put away a traitor who sold secrets that killed American operatives. Stone's daughter died because his associates thought she had information. Your mother went into witness protection to protect you from his revenge. Everything she did was to keep you safe. Sarah turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, is that why? All the secrets, the emergency fund, the way you always checked locks twice and never let me post photos online? It was all because of him. I nodded, not trusting my voice. And I helped him. Oh God, I helped him destroy you. Sarah buried her face in her hands. The money from the charity. He said you'd stolen it first, that I was just taking back what was already ours. He showed me documents, evidence. All forged, Chen confirmed. Stone spent months creating a false narrative, knowing exactly which buttons to push. You're not the first person he's manipulated, Miss Morrison, but you can be the last." The rest of the day dissolved into negotiations. Sarah agreed to cooperate fully to testify against Stone and Harold Fitzgerald, who'd been Stone's inside man on the charity board. In exchange, Chen recommended probation and community service instead of prison time. As we left the courthouse, Sarah walking beside me for the first time in months, the media frenzy had reached fever pitch. But I didn't care about the cameras or the questions or the headlines that would follow. My daughter was looking at me, really looking at me, for the first time in years. "Mom," she said quietly as we reached my car. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I pulled her into the kind of hug we hadn't shared since she was a teenager, feeling her sob against my shoulder. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Over her shoulder, I saw Stone being led away in handcuffs, FBI agents on either side. He looked back once, expecting to see triumph in his eyes. Instead, I saw the hollow defeat of a man who'd spent 23 years planning revenge, only to be undone by the daughter he'd tried to turn into a weapon. As we drove away, Sarah asked quietly, "What happens now?" Now, I said we tell the truth, all of it, and we rebuild. The wire was still recording, capturing this moment of reconciliation after near destruction. Tomorrow, there would be more testimony, more revelations, more painful truths to confront. But tonight, I had my daughter back, and Marcus Stone's 23-year quest for revenge had ended not with my destruction, but with his own. The final day of trial arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything seem sharper, more real. I'd spent the night with Sarah at my kitchen table, the same one where she'd done homework and eaten countless meals. But instead of math problems or teenage gossip, we talked about truth, the kind that cuts deep before it heals. She told me about every meeting with Stone, how he'd seemed so grandfatherly at first, sharing stories about military service and honor, how he'd slowly introduced doubts about my past, showing her forged documents that looked official, building a narrative where I was the villain and he was the victim seeking justice. He knew exactly what to say, Sarah whispered, staring at her untouched coffee. "Every insecurity I had about you being secretive every time I felt like you were keeping me at arm's length. He used it all." Now walking into the courthouse together, actually together not as adversaries, felt like stepping into a new world. The media noticed immediately, cameras swinging to capture mother and daughter united. Sterling met us at the entrance, his usual swagger replaced by professional efficiency. "Sarah, we need to prep your testimony," he said, but his eyes kept sliding to me with something like respect. "Mrs. Captain Blackwood, I owe you an apology. I genuinely believed—" "You believed what you were meant to believe," I cut him off. "Stone fooled better people than you." Inside the courtroom, energy was electric. Word had leaked about the FBI involvement, Stone's arrest, the conspiracy that went deeper than anyone imagined. Judge Winters took her seat with the grim satisfaction of someone who'd seen justice derailed and was ready to set it right. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures. Evidence has come to light suggesting this entire trial was orchestrated as part of a criminal conspiracy. You'll hear testimony today that may shock you, but I ask you to listen with open minds and remember that truth, however complex, is what we seek." Chen called me to the stand first, but this time I didn't shuffle forward as meek Lori Thompson. I walked with the bearing of Captain Victoria Blackwood JAG Course, ready to tell the truth I'd hidden for 23 years. "State your name for the record," Chen said. "My legal name is Lori Thompson. My birth name was Victoria Blackwood. I served as a captain in the Judge Advocate General's Corps from 1995 to 2001. Can you explain to the jury why you assumed a false identity?" I looked at the 12 citizens who'd been asked to judge my daughter and now would hear why. In 2001, I successfully prosecuted Colonel Marcus Stone for treason. He'd sold classified intelligence to foreign governments for 15 years, resulting in the deaths of 17 American operatives. After his conviction, his daughter was murdered by his former associates, who believed she had hidden information. Stone blamed me and made credible threats against my life and any family I might have. The FBI and U.S. Marshals recommended witness protection. And you've lived as Lori Thompson ever since. Yes, I married, had a daughter, built a life. I founded the Helping Hearts Children's Foundation specifically to help children who'd lost parents to violence, because I understood that pain. I never stole a penny from that charity. Every dollar went to families in need. Chen methodically walked through the evidence, my real service record, the witness protection documents, the communications from Stone threatening revenge. The jury listened with rapt attention as 23 years of lies unraveled into truth. Mrs. Thompson, Captain Blackwood, did you ever tell your daughter about your past? No. I found Sarah's eyes in the gallery. I thought I was protecting her. I see now that secrets, even those meant to shield, can become weapons in the wrong hands. Sterling's cross-examination was gentle, almost apologetic. He established that I'd never committed any crimes, that the emergency fund was indeed for protection, that every suspicious document had been forged by Stone or his associates. Then came the moment I dreaded and hoped for in equal measure. Chen called Sarah to the stand. My daughter looked fragile, but determined as she was sworn in. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was clear as Chen began her questioning. Miss Morrison, you've agreed to testify truthfully about your involvement in this conspiracy. Can you tell the jury when you first met Marcus Stone? 6 months ago, January 15th, I was at a coffee shop on Maple Street and this older gentleman struck up a conversation. He said he recognized me, that he'd served with my mother years ago. What happened next? Sarah's voice grew stronger as she recounted the slow seduction of truth mixed with lies. Stone showing her my real service record but claiming I'd been corrupt. The forged evidence of theft during my JAG years. The way he'd twisted my protective behavior into proof of guilt. He never told me to steal from the charity, Sarah said. But he kept saying how unfair it was that Mom had all this hidden money while pretending to live modestly. He said she'd stolen it first, that I wouldn't really be stealing, just reclaiming what was mine. And you believed him. I wanted to. The admission hung heavy in the air. Mom and I had been growing apart since Dad died. She was always so careful, so closed off about her past. When Stone offered explanations, they fit the narrative I'd built in my head about her keeping secrets. Chen presented the evidence of Sarah's theft. $2.8 million siphoned over 2 years, hidden in accounts Stone had helped her establish. But now the context was clear. This wasn't greed, but manipulation, a daughter turned against her mother by a master manipulator seeking revenge. Miss Morrison, do you know what Stone planned to do with this trial? He said once Mom was convicted, he'd help me take over the charity. He had investors lined up, people who would triple our endowment. I thought I was going to help more children than ever. Sarah's voice broke. I was such a fool. What made you realize the truth? Yesterday when he testified. The way he smiled at Mom, the hatred in it. And when Agent Chen revealed his connections to foreign operatives, the same people who killed his daughter, I realized I'd been helping the man who'd spent 23 years trying to destroy my mother, the man she'd spent my whole life protecting me from. Sterling handled his own client with care, establishing that she'd been manipulated, that she genuinely believed she was exposing corruption rather than committing it. By the time Sarah left the stand, she wasn't a criminal mastermind, but a young woman who'd been expertly groomed by a predator seeking revenge. Harold Fitzgerald was arrested during the lunch break, FBI agents walking him out in handcuffs as he protested his innocence. Chen showed the jury his communications with Stone, the payments he'd received, his role in creating false documentation to support the conspiracy. The afternoon brought a parade of FBI agents and forensic accountants, laying out the full scope of Stone's plan. He'd spent years cultivating contacts, building a network of supporters who'd benefited from his treason and were willing to help destroy me. The charity trial was meant to be just the beginning. He'd planned to systematically destroy everyone I cared about, saving me for last. As the evidence mounted, I watched the jury's faces transform from confusion to understanding to outrage. They'd been used too manipulated into participating in Stone's revenge plot. Judge Winters called a final recess before closing arguments. In the hallway, Chen pulled me aside. Stone wants to make a deal. He'll reveal his entire network, every foreign contact, every domestic supporter in exchange for transfer to a minimum security facility. No deals, I said firmly. He spent 23 years planning this. Let him spend the rest of his life paying for it. Chen smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Back in the courtroom, her closing argument was masterful. She laid out how Stone had orchestrated everything, finding Harold to infiltrate the board, spending months grooming Sarah, creating elaborate forgeries to support the false narrative. She showed how I'd done nothing wrong except try to protect my daughter from a monster. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen a unique kind of evil here. Not the simple greed of embezzlement, but the calculated destruction of a family by a man who confused justice with revenge. Sarah Morrison was a victim of manipulation. Lori Thompson, Captain Victoria Blackwood, was a victim of a decades-long vendetta. The only criminal here is Marcus Stone. Sterling's closing was equally powerful, painting Sarah as a young woman who'd made terrible choices based on carefully crafted lies. He asked for mercy, for understanding, for the recognition that she'd been a weapon in someone else's war. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, Sarah gripped my hand so tightly I thought my bones might crack. On the charge of embezzlement in the first degree, the foreman read, "We find the defendant, Sarah Morrison, guilty." My heart sank, but he continued. However, we strongly recommend judicial mercy given the extraordinary circumstances of manipulation and coercion involved in this case. Judge Winters nodded thoughtfully. The court will take the jury's recommendation under advisement. Sentencing will be held pending completion of the defendant's cooperation with federal authorities. Miss Morrison, you'll remain free on bond, but you are not to leave the state. It wasn't perfect, but it was hope. As the courtroom cleared, I stood with my daughter, both of us trying to process what had just happened. Stone was facing new federal charges that would ensure he died in prison. Harold would likely get 15 to 20 years. The foreign operatives Stone had been working with were now exposed to international law enforcement. And Sarah and I. We had the chance to rebuild, to create something honest from the ruins of decades of secrets. "Mom," Sarah said as we walked toward the exit, "I need to return the money, all of it. And I want to work at the charity again, but really work. No salary, just helping kids who've lost parents, kids who might be vulnerable to people like Stone." I stopped walking, turning to face the daughter I'd almost lost. "Are you sure the court might require restitution, but—" "I'm sure. I stole from children who needed help because I believed lies about you. I want to spend however long it takes making that right." She met my eyes, and I saw Thomas there. The same moral clarity, the same need to fix what was broken. "Will you let me—" "We'll do it together," I promised. As we stepped into the afternoon sunlight, the media circus was waiting. But this time, I didn't hide. With Sarah beside me, I faced the cameras and told our story. The truth, all of it, from my years as a JAG prosecutor, to the witness protection that followed, to the way Stone had tried to use my daughter against me. For 23 years, I've lived in fear of Marcus Stone's revenge, I said into the microphones. That ends today. My name is Victoria Blackwood. I'm a retired captain in the U.S. Army JAG Corps, and I'm done hiding. Sarah squeezed my hand as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. We'd face them all eventually. The interviews, the investigations, the long process of healing. But for now, we walked to my car together, mother and daughter survivors of a war we'd never asked to fight. The trap Stone had so carefully set had indeed sprung, just not the way he'd intended. Instead of destroying us, it had forced us to confront 23 years of secrets and lies. And in that confrontation, we'd found something stronger than his hate, the truth finally told, and the chance to rebuild on honest ground. 2 years. That's how long it took to untangle the web Marcus Stone had woven around our lives. 2 years of testimony investigations and the slow work of rebuilding trust. As I sat in the federal courthouse in Washington, watching Stone receive his final sentence, life without parole on charges of conspiracy fraud and espionage, I thought about how different this courtroom felt from the one where Sarah had been tried. Marcus Stone. The federal judge intoned, "You spent 23 years planning revenge against a prosecutor who was simply doing her job. In that time, you corrupted a young woman, betrayed former associates who trusted you, and attempted to destroy a charity that helps vulnerable children. This court sentences you to spend the remainder of your natural life in federal prison." Stone didn't look at me as they led him away. His shoulders, once military straight, were bowed with the weight of final defeat. The foreign operatives who'd funded his revenge were either arrested or had fled to non-extradition countries. Harold Fitzgerald was serving 15 years, his assets seized, to pay restitution to the charity. The network Stone had built to destroy me had collapsed entirely. Outside the courthouse, Sarah waited. She'd testified brilliantly in the federal case, detailing every manipulation, every lie Stone had fed her. Her probation had been completed 6 months ago, the judge moved by her genuine remorse and dedication to making amends. "How do you feel?" she asked as I emerged into the D.C. sunshine. "Old," I admitted, "tired but free." We flew back to Ohio that evening to the life we'd rebuilt brick by brick. The Helping Hearts Children's Foundation was thriving again, trust restored through transparency and Sarah's tireless work. She'd returned every penny she'd stolen, then raised twice that amount through fundraising events, where she told our story as a cautionary tale about manipulation and the danger of secrets. A week after Stone's sentencing, I found Sarah in the charity's office working late as usual. She'd transformed from the entitled financial advisor who'd sneered at my simple life into someone who understood service sacrifice and the weight of making amends. "You know you don't have to work these hours anymore," I said, setting a cup of tea on her desk. "You've more than made up for everything." She looked up and I saw Thomas in her smile. "I'm not doing it for penance anymore, Mom. I'm doing it because it matters." The next morning, we held our monthly board meeting. New faces had replaced those who'd been complicit or complacent during the conspiracy. Margaret Simpson still served one of the few who'd questioned the narrative against me. As we reviewed the latest family we'd helped, a mother of 3 whose husband had been killed in a workplace accident, I thought about the strange path that had led us here. Before we adjourn, Margaret said, "I'd like to acknowledge something. Lori, Victoria, whoever you choose to be, you've shown us what real strength looks like. Not just in surviving Stone's vendetta, but in how you've handled the aftermath. Forgiving Sarah, rebuilding this charity, using your story to help others. It's remarkable." I had good teachers. I replied thinking of Thomas, who'd loved me without knowing my real name, of James Harrison, who'd recognized me after 23 years and helped expose the truth, of Jennifer Chen, who'd risked her career to pursue justice. And I learned that secrets, even those meant to protect, can become prisons. The truth might hurt, but lies destroy. After the meeting, Sarah and I visited Thomas's grave, something we'd started doing together every week. The headstone read, "Beloved husband and father." Simple words for a man who'd given me the greatest gift, a normal life, and a daughter who, despite everything, had found her way back to the values he'd embodied. "I wish he could see us now," Sarah said, arranging fresh flowers. "He can," I said, believing it. "And I think he'd be proud, not of the mistakes we made, but of how we faced them." That evening, we hosted dinner for Jennifer Chen, now the district attorney, after her brilliant handling of the conspiracy cases. James Harrison joined us, retired from the bench, but still sharp as ever. It was a strange family we'd formed, connected by trauma, but bonded by truth. "So what's next for the infamous Captain Blackwood?" Chen asked over dessert. "Any plans to write a book? Hollywood's been calling, you know." Let someone else tell those stories, I said. I've got a charity to run and a daughter to enjoy. 23 years of hiding is enough drama for one lifetime. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. Besides, we're too busy with the new project. Tell them, Mom. I smiled at my daughter's enthusiasm. We're starting a program for children of incarcerated parents, kids who might be vulnerable to manipulation because of anger at the system, confusion about their parents' crimes. We want to help them process those feelings before someone like Stone can exploit them. Turning our pain into purpose, Harrison mused. Very like you, Victoria. It's Lori, I corrected gently. Victoria Blackwood served her purpose, but Lori Thompson is who I chose to become. Although now everyone knows they're the same person, I'd rather honor the life I built than the one I left behind. As our guests departed and Sarah helped me clean up, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Stone had meant to destroy us with truth twisted into weapons. Instead, his machinations had forced us to confront our secrets, bridge the gap between who I was and who I'd become. Mom, Sarah said as we finished the dishes, I've been thinking about law school. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Prosecutor track. I know what it's like to be manipulated to have someone use your vulnerabilities against you. Maybe I could help protect others from predators like Stone. She met my eyes. Think I have what it takes. I saw myself at her age, idealistic, determined, ready to fight for justice. But I also saw wisdom born from experience, the kind that comes from falling hard and choosing to rise. I think you'd be formidable, I said. Just remember, the truth is your strongest weapon, but compassion is your best shield. 6 months later, I watched Sarah receive her acceptance letter to law school. She'd chosen Ohio State, wanting to stay close to home and continue her work with the charity while studying. The girl who'd once sneered at my simple life now found purpose in service and truth. A year after that, she argued her first mock trial case. I sat in the gallery, no longer hiding who I was, as she methodically dismantled her opponent's argument with precision that would have made any JAG prosecutor proud. But where I'd been rigid in my pursuit of justice, Sarah tempered her approach with understanding of human frailty. Now, as I write this account for the charity's newsletter, our story laid bare as a lesson in redemption, I think about the unexpected gifts hidden in our darkest moments. Stone's revenge plot had nearly destroyed us. The secrets I'd kept to protect Sarah had instead made her vulnerable to his manipulation. The lies we'd both believed had torn us apart. But in the ruins of that deception, we'd found something real. A relationship built on truth rather than protective fiction. A purpose born from pain, transformed into service. A understanding that the strongest families aren't those without secrets, but those who face their truths together. The emergency fund I'd hidden for 23 years now serves as seed money for the Children of Incarcerated Parents program. Every dollar that once represented fear now represents hope for kids who might otherwise fall prey to manipulators seeking to use their pain. Sarah graduates from law school next month. She's already fielded offers from prestigious firms, but she's choosing the public defender's office. I want to make sure everyone gets the kind of defense they deserve, she told me. Even the guilty ones, especially the manipulated ones. I'm 70 now, my hair more silver than brown, my steps a bit slower, but I'm no longer looking over my shoulder, no longer checking locks twice or scanning crowds for threats. Marcus Stone is dying in prison, his body finally matching the decay of his soul. The shadows he cast over my life have been burned away by truth's harsh light. Sometimes young mothers come to the charity running from their own Marcus Stones, carrying secrets that weigh them down. I tell them our story, all of it, the ugly parts and the redemptive ones. I tell them that secrets meant to protect can become weapons in the wrong hands, that children are stronger than we think, more capable of handling truth than comfortable lies, that the only way to defeat those who would use our past against us is to own it completely and without shame. The truth will set you free. I tell them, But first, it might destroy everything you've built on lies. That's okay. What you rebuild on honest ground will be stronger than anything deception can create. Last week, a woman came to us with 2 young children fleeing an ex-husband recently released from prison. He'd been making threats, playing the long game of revenge. As I helped her fill out paperwork for our protection program, she asked the question so many do. How do you live with the fear? How do you protect your children when evil is patient? I thought of Stone of 23 years spent hiding of the daughter I'd almost lost to secrets and lies. You live in truth, I told her. You teach your children to recognize manipulation. You build community instead of walls. And you remember that patient evil is still just evil. It thrives in shadows but withers in light. She nodded, gathering her children closer. Another family saved not by hiding, but by refusing to let fear dictate their future. It's become my life's work, this transformation of trauma into triumph. Sarah works beside me when she's not in court, 2 generations united by honesty that once seemed impossible. The Helping Hearts Children's Foundation has helped over 5,000 families since that terrible trial 2 years ago. Our story splashed across headlines as scandal has become testimony to redemption's possibility. Donations pour in from people who understand that the best help comes from those who've walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. As I close this account, I think about you reading this story. Perhaps you're carrying secrets believing they protect those you love. Perhaps someone is manipulating your pain, turning your protective instincts into weapons against you. Perhaps you're Sarah, angry at mysteries you don't understand, vulnerable to those who would exploit your need for answers. Here's what I've learned after 70 years of life, 23 of them in hiding. The truth we fear is rarely as destructive as the lies we tell to avoid it. Our children are more resilient than we imagine, capable of handling honesty with grace when given the chance. Those who would use our past against us lose their power when we claim our stories first. And sometimes, just sometimes, the worst thing that happens to us becomes the catalyst for the best thing we ever do. My name is Lori Thompson, formerly Captain Victoria Blackwood. I put a traitor in prison, hid from his revenge for decades, and almost lost my daughter to the secrets I kept. But today I run a charity with that same daughter, helping families torn apart by violence and lies find their way back to each other. If that's not proof that truth trumps revenge, that love survives, betrayal, that redemption is possible even in our darkest moments, then I don't know what is. Thank you for reading our story. If you're struggling with your own secrets, your own manipulators, your own impossible choices between truth and protection, know this: you're stronger than you realize, and the truth, however painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. The sun is setting now over our small Ohio town, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Sarah just texted that she won her case today, defended a young woman who'd been manipulated into committing fraud by an abusive partner. Another victory for truth over deception, another life salvaged from the wreckage of lies. Tomorrow we'll wake up and do it again. Help another family, tell another truth, build another brick in the foundation of honest lives. It's good work, necessary work, born from the ashes of Stone's failed revenge. He meant to destroy us. Instead, he freed us. And in that freedom, we've found purpose greater than any secret could contain. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to ask you something. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything you thought you knew? Have you found the strength to forgive someone who was manipulated into hurting you, or sought forgiveness for choices you made based on lies? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. How do we balance protecting our loved ones with the danger of keeping secrets? When is truth worth the pain it might cause? If this story touched you or reminded you of the importance of honest communication with those we love, please hit that like button. And if you believe others might benefit from hearing about the power of truth over comfortable lies, Consider subscribing to follow more stories of redemption and second chances. And please share this story with anyone who might be struggling with family secrets, manipulation, or the weight of hidden truths. Sometimes knowing others have walked this path and survived makes all the difference. Thank you for joining me on this journey from deception to truth, from betrayal to forgiveness. Remember, you're never too far gone for redemption, never too broken for healing. The truth might hurt, but it's in that honest pain that real freedom begins. Until next time, may you find the courage to live in truth and the wisdom to transform your pain into purpose. With gratitude and hope, Lori